Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Chris Eubank, you may remember when he was questioned during I think it was the first press conference for the Conor Benn fight this time round. He mentioned the fact that he would give £50,000 to the undercard fighters from the aborted 2022 show where Ben popped hot and therefore the fight was cancelled and therefore the card was scrapped, and a lot of the undercard fighters lost money because they'd spent thousands preparing, as you have to do if you're a professional fighter. So they were out of pocket. They weren't just not paid, they were out of pocket. And Ben said Eubank said he would give £50,000 to the undercard fighters to, spread amongst themselves, and maybe it would pay off some of their expenses at least. He couldn't pay the whole purses, of course, but it's not his responsibility to do so. Well, it seems he's been good to his word. So fair play to Chris Eubank Jr. There have been fighters in the past who said, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to pay this, I'm going to pay that, and they've paid nothing. But Eubank Jr. apparently has paid that $50,000 because a couple of fighters have sort of bigged him up on, I think it's X. I do have an X account, Twitter, whatever it was called then, but I don't use it. I don't like Twitter. But apparently they've been saying, thank you very much, Chris. So, for example, Lyndon Arthur, he said, got to respect Chris Eubank Jr. He actually paid what he said he would. And then the current unified world champ, Ellie Scottney, she wrote, well, I've just checked my EUBANK statement. I see what you did there, Ellie. Good girl. Very clever. And Chris was as good as his word. Thank you. So, whatever you think Chris Eubank Jr., and he is one of those, as they say, a Marmite character, I think he deserves a lot of credit for, for sticking to his guns. I mean, people will say, well, 50 grand's nothing to him, and, you get that sort of attitude. Well, all right, he's being paid millions for this Ben fight, and there's a rematch clause, so he's going to get paid, win, lose, or draw, he'll get paid millions more, but he didn't have to do that. And it's not as if he said, oh, I'll give $500,000, and then he only gave 50 grand. He said, I'll give 50 grand, and you can share it amongst yourselves, and maybe it'll pay off some of your expenses that you lost. Now, the cynics amongst us might say, or should we say those who are sceptical amongst us might say, yes, but that's really a sort of psychological dig at Conor Benn, because Conor Benn was the reason why that first, the fight was, when it was first proposed in 2022, and it was only about, 5 or 6 days from the fight that it was scrapped, and all the controversy around it, where who knew that Ben had popped hot, and were they going to let the fight go ahead anyway, and all this sort of stuff. You could say, well, Conor Benn was the reason those fighters didn't get paid. So Eubank Jr. is saying, don't worry, I'll sort you out. When really, of course, Ben, it could be argued, is the reason that they didn't get paid. Now, having said that, Eubank did actually say to Ben and Eddie Hearn, I hope you will match this 50,000. So he's sort of saying, it's not my fault that the fight was cancelled. It's your fault because you failed a PED test. But here's 50 grand. And let's see if Ben and Eddie Hearn, his promoter, also pay up. That's quite shrewd when it comes to the old, psychological foreplay, isn't it? I don't know whether they have paid up. They probably haven't. I don't know. Honestly, don't know. I haven't read anything. But nevertheless, even if he had a sort of rather skullduggerous ulterior motive, at least Eubank did stick to his guns. It wasn't a gimmick. He said, I'm going to pay 50 grand, and I did. And it seems that the fighters who benefited from that are very grateful. So I think that's a good thing. Well done, Chris Eubank Jr. That would be my message. I don't know what you think. If you've got any opinions, please leave them below. And yeah, I'll have a read. But as always, thanks for watching the video. Please like it if you enjoyed the video. And if you're, if you're new to the channel, you want to subscribe, that'll be a big deal. We're very, very close to 6,000 subscribers. I think we need about another 5. So if you want to help us get over that finishing line, we're crawling towards it, like the thirsty man in the desert crawling towards the well. Go on, hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing. Takes a second. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much, as always, for your time, and I'll catch you later. Bye for now.